So I am going to keep my presentation limited to mostly to images and videos because I think all of us in India have a large experience on tuberculosis. And of course, we all know that it manifests as infertility, menstrual irregularities, lower abdominal pain. Endometrial tuberculosis may have severe reproductive consequences on fertility in spontaneous as well as IVF cycles. And the pictures which are going to follow, they are high resolution hysteroscopic images of endometrial tuberculosis in cases which are confirmed by PCR and BACTEC culture. So we actually had three things. We had the PCR positive, BACTEC culture positive, and we also had the hysteroscopic markers, which I'll be talking about. Amongst the markers, we basically will be looking at four things. So one is bizarre endometrial architecture, tubercular deposits, which are microscopic to large macroscopic structures, ill-defined endometrial gland openings, and adhesions and synechiae. Way back in 2004, we were published in the Journal of American Association. So here you can see two images which actually show you the tubal ostia, and you can see these white deposits. So I'm talking about the first parameter of a bizarre endometrium. You can see how bizarre the endometrium is. It's lost its character completely. It's dirty white, pale and irregular. The gland openings are almost not visible. And in this picture, you can actually see a tubercle. These are images of bizarre endometrium seen from different patients. So you can see the flimsy bands, you can see these little white deposits here, you can see these deposits here. And this is a characteristic pathognomic feature, one of the pathognomic features of endometrial tuberculosis. Again, these are different patients. So you can see here how the endometrium has completely lost itself. It's not that smooth, proliferative or secretory kind of endometrium which we see on hysteroscopy. And in this picture, you can also see certain flimsy adhesions. We were published on the JMIG cover page with images of surface architecture in endometrial tuberculosis. So we used the microcolpohysteroscope here, and this is how apparently the endometrium looked. When we went closer with the hysteroscope, microcolpohysteroscope, what we saw was a nibbled up appearance. Look at this, and this white powdery substance on the endometrium, which again is pathognomic of endometrial tuberculosis. So these are images, these are macroscopic deposits seen in panoramic mode, and this is deposit. So we go closer and closer. The trick is to take your hysteroscope closer to the endometrium, and then you get to see these deposits. And this is a large one. So actually it's a very good idea on hysteroscopy to take a endometrial directed biopsy from here rather than anywhere else. And the chances are you're going to have better results. This is a video showing you a tubercular deposit resting on the posterior wall. It is very important, you know, in hysteroscopy when we start to do it, especially for suspected cases of genital tuberculosis, that we keep our flow rates lesser. I'll talk a little later about the flow rates. This is another video, because what is going to happen is that these are flimsy adhesion bands, and you can see here, this is the tubercular deposit. This is also a deposit impregnated on the flimsy adhesion band. So these are the kind of findings. If our flow rates are high, they are going to be washed away. So it is very important that when we start to do hysteroscopy for a suspected case of genital tuberculosis, we keep our flow rates to the lesser most possible figure, so that we get to see the anatomical landmarks, but at the same time, we don't lose out on these pathognomic features of endometrial tuberculosis. These are tubercular deposits seen under high magnification. You can see this, and you can see how irregular it looks. We were published again in JMIG with unusual appearing tubercular deposits at hysteroscopy. In fact, these were the deposits which were picked up on the vaginal scan. They were highly reflective, and this is the inside picture. Look at these shining objects, which are actually the deposits which you are seeing in these images. This is atrophic endometrium, and on the atrophic endometrium, you are seeing the deposits. These are large tubercles. This is one here, and in fact in this picture you can even see the adhesion bands which are there. So basically endometrial tuberculosis actually affects the uh, basal layer of the endometrium, and often despite the fact that sometimes it is washed off with the menstruation, the findings, but they always come up again because of reinfection. I think Dr. Nina did such a wonderful justice to laparoscopic images. Congratulations, Dr. Nina. They were wonderful to see those. Microscopic tubercular deposits seen in contact utilizing ATX magnification. So actually you can even get to see the RBCs in when you see the video. The only thing is with microcolpohysteroscopy, you have to have the expertise to kind of look at the same place, especially inside the uterine cavity, because it is not as easy in the sense that, you know, it keeps moving and you would see a new image every possible second. So it's a good idea to have a good image recording instrument in your OR setup. These are adhesions in the endocervical canal. You can see this actually, and these are again endocervical canal. So the arbor vitae are lost, the lateral columns are lost, and you are getting to see the adhesion bands. Again, adhesions in endometrial tuberculosis. You can see here the adhesion bands, and you can see the cornu. These are the cornual ones, and you can see the tubulostia. Again, these are with magnification in the same patient. We used the regular telescope, and then later we used the microcolpohysteroscope, and going closer we could see and appreciate these tubercles much more, and even the adhesion bands which were there. This is a patient. This is a very interesting video that I put up because regularly we would tend to do hysteroscopic adhesiolysis with the scissors in our office setting with the office hysteroscope. But here you are seeing that you will notice, please notice that it's a tubular kind of a cavity. So it was a completely actually a J-shaped kind of a cavity with adhesions, and it was an open, so there was no distension on the office hysteroscope. So we have gone in with the Collins knife, and mechanically we are trying to break this adhesion band. We have done that, and this is how you are getting to see the tubal ostia and the cornu. Now the other side, when we will rotate the other side of the cornu, the tubal ostia is just not visible. The idea always in adhesiolysis always is that you try to restore the anatomy of the uterus. Basically the three landmarks, both the tubal ostias and the endocervix. It's an inverted T shape, so that is what you keep in your mind. But even if you can't reach out to the ostia, it is a good idea to try and at least try to locate it. In this patient, we had to almost do a lateral metroplasty because it was, and we had to use the energy source because it was just not possible to do it any other way. These are the patients where actually, like Dr. Sunita had just mentioned, that in tuberculosis, it's as is in laparoscopy, so is in hysteroscopy as well. You have perforations, you have to be prepared for perforations, you have to be prepared for false passages. And this was one of the false passages that we actually created accidentally. And this is actually the opening. So false passage, when a false passage is created, you're going to see circular muscle fibers, the intrauterine pressure is going to go high. You're not going to see the anatomical landmarks. So keep these 3 points in your mind when you're doing hysteroscopy. These are deposits impregnated over flimsy adhesions. Again, this is a video showing the same. You can see the adhesion band and you can actually see the deposits right here. Again, these are cobweb-like adhesions, and this is the cornual area. You can see these, it's a kind of a cobweb which we were published with this terminology. And these are the cobweb-like adhesions which kind of hide the flimsy adhesions which have impregnated tubercles on them. We were on the cover page of Fertility Sterility with our image of intraluminal tubal adhesions. You can see the tubal adhesions here. Coming to what exactly the normal and the diseased ostium look like hysteroscopically. So our reviewer for this paper actually wanted us to not only identify but also have the picture. So we had to take the data retrospectively, analyze it, and we found that a normal ostium will have an intramural epithelium which is pink. Minor folds have smooth surface, normal vascularization of the minor folds along the long axis of the folds, collateral vessels, and physiological contractions during hysteroscopy. So as of now, we are talking of physiological contractions inside the uterine cavity. and also the physiological contractions of the tubal ostia. So actually at lower pressures, you're going to actually see the tubal ostia moving like a fish mouth. And what has been advocated is like about 13 seconds or so you have one contraction. You need to work at lower pressures. In the diseased ostium, intramural epithelium is dirty white, minor folds have rough surface, no vascularization is seen, no collateral vessels are seen, and no physiological contractions are seen. It's a very morbid like ostia. So this is on the top image, you can see the endosalpingeal folds, you can see the nice vascularization, the pink coloration, while the lower ones, you can see the adhesion bands, you can see it's a morbid round kind of a ostia. These are normal ostia. I will take you through the abnormal ostia. And amongst the abnormal ostia, you will often, in tuberculosis especially, you will find sometimes just nothing to see, or a pinhole kind ostia and a morbid round ostia here. This is obscure. You actually go to the cornu and look for the ostia. You're not going to find the ostia, and you have to kind of, imagine it for your own self as a landmark. With experience, you get to know that. These are ostias which are pinhole. These are tubal adhesions. So you can see here ostial, tubal ostia, and you can see the adhesion bands right here. We were published in Fertility Sterility with another paper of ours about relook hysteroscopy after antitubercular therapy. And this is the images of the same patient before the ATT, and these are the ones which are after the ATT. So you can see here the endometrium has lost its character. It's like almost got scars. 6 months of ATT. It's a nice, smooth, pink colored endometrium. This is the right cornu. This is the right cornu after ATT. And this is the right anterolateral wall, and you can see how well it has recovered. These are the kind of patients who do well in terms of pregnancy outcomes. Again, this is images of other patients before ATT and after ATT. You can see how the endometrium actually recovers, and the disease actually consolidates into a tubercle. We have found this, and more importantly, we have found this in the endocervical canal. So the challenge is to have more studies and related to this, and have more data coming out of hysteroscopic evaluation for endometrial tuberculosis. So we started to do one interesting thing, and we were published with this as a starry sky appearance. What we started to do was we started to put in the hysteroscope after the CPT. So what we started to see was a methylene blue dye. These are of course before and after is the ATT, but I'll take you through the images which are the blue methylene blue dye. So what it started to do was that the background became blue, and somehow the tubercles do not take up the dye. So they started to kind of stand out, and we actually named it as a starry sky appearance. This is the left cornu after CPT. So you can see here, these are the images which are showing. These are the little tubercles which stand out. And in this picture, you can see these little micro deposits, which actually are sometimes not even visible, but they tend to stand out very much on a methylene blue dye. Again, this is one which stood out. Here it is. So these are scarred endosalpingeal folds, and this is how this is the tubal ostia. You can see the scarring here, and you can see inside. Actually, if you will, you can actually do a good falloposcopy when you start doing it, taking the hysteroscope closer to the endometrium. In hysteroscopy, it's all about visualization. It's all about distension. You get a good distension, you will get to see the good landmarks. And also, I think it is really time that we start looking at the endometrium very closely, since it has got entities like chronic endometritis, which again we've been published with markers for chronic endometritis. So there are differentiating features to that. This is how it looks with methylene blue and without methylene blue, the same patient, the same anatomy. These are intratubal adhesions. You can actually see the inside, this is a tubal ostia, and you can actually see inside the tubal ostia, the adhesion bands and deposits as well.
And we have 1 minute remaining.
Yeah, thank you. I'll just take you forward. This is one of our publications, endometrial tuberculosis on a unicornuate uterus with a rudimentary horn. Tubal ostia. And this is, I purposely put this video because what we are now working on is polyps around the tubal ostia, micropolyps. And here you can see around the tubal ostia, we look at this, it's a very beautiful image, the little polyps which stand out. We are finding that there seems to be a relationship between genital tuberculosis and polyps. In chronic endometritis, you have the micropolyps spread all over. In tuberculosis, they seem to be more towards the ostia. This is one of our recent ones, endometrial tubercular abscess in JMake. And we were published on the cover page of the Indian Journal as well. Hysteroscopy is a valuable modality, and I will be happy to share anything more at any further point of time should anyone want to ask me. Thank you so very much. My references. Thank you very much.